My dear wife Carrie and I have just been a week in our new house, the Laurels, Brickfield Terrace, Holloway. A nice 6-room residence, not counting basement, with a front breakfast parlour. And there is a flight of 10 steps to the front door, which, by the by, we keep locked with a chain up, which saves the servant the trouble of going up to the front door, thereby taking her from her work. We have a nice little back garden which runs down to the railway. We were rather afraid of the noise of the trains at first, but the landlord said we should not notice them after a bit and took £2 off the rent. He was certainly right. And beyond the cracking of the garden wall at the bottom, we have suffered no inconvenience. After my work in the city, I like to be at home. What's the good of a home if you are never in it? There is always something to be done. A tin tack here, a Venetian blind to put straight, a fan to nail up, or part of a carpet to nail down. While Carrie is not above putting a button on a shirt, mending a pillowcase, or practicing the Sylvia Gavotte on our new cottage piano. Home, sweet home. That's my motto. I am always in of an evening. Our old friend Going may drop in without ceremony. So may Cummings, who lives opposite. My dear wife Caroline and I are pleased to see them if they like to drop in on us. But Carrie and I can manage to pass our evenings together without friends. It is also a great comfort to know that our boy Willie is getting on so well in the bank at Oldham. We should like to see more of him. I thought this would be a good opportunity to start a diary. I have often seen reminiscences of people I have never even heard of, and I fail to see, because I do not happen to be a somebody, why my diary should not be interesting, or even published. My only regret is that I did not commence it when I was a youth. In the evening, Cummings unexpectedly dropped in to show me a meerschaum pipe he had won in a raffle in the city, and told me to handle it carefully, as it would spoil the colouring if the hand was moist. He said he would not stay, as he did not care much for the smell of paint, and fell over the scraper as he went out. Must get the scraper removed, or else I shall get into a scrape. I don't often make jokes. May 18th, Sunday. After church, the curate came back with us. I sent Carrie on to open the front door, which we do not use except on special occasions. She could not get it open, and after all my display, I had to take the curate, whose name, by the by, I did not catch, round to the side entrance. He caught his foot in the scraper and tore the bottom of his trousers. Most annoying, as Carrie could not well offer to repair them on a Sunday. Went to church again in the evening. Walked back with the curate. Carrie noticed he had got on the same pair of trousers, only repaired. He wants me to take round the plate, which I think a great compliment. May 20th. Farmerson the ironmonger came round to attend to the scraper. He seems a very civil fellow. He says he does not usually conduct such small jobs personally, but for me he would do so. Before dinner, took a walk round the garden and discovered a beautiful spot for sowing mustard and cress and radishes. After dinner, Carrie trimmed herself a little sailor hat, while I read to her the Exchange and Mart. We had a good laugh from my trying on the hat after she had finished it. Carrie said it looked so funny with my beard, and how people would have roared if I went on the stage like that. Going is sometimes very tedious with his remarks, and not always cautious, and Carrie once very properly had to remind him that she was present. Cummings called later, and we played dominoes. May 22nd, left Farmerson repairing scraper. But when I came home, I found 4 men working. I asked the meaning of it, and Farmerson said that in making a fresh hole, he had penetrated the water pipe. He said it was a most ridiculous place to put the water pipe, and the man who did it evidently knew nothing about his business. I felt his excuse was no consolation for the expense I shall be put to. May 23rd. Mustard and cress not come up yet. May 24th. The first post brought a nice letter from our dear son Willie, acknowledging a trifling present which Carrie sent him, the day before yesterday being his 20th birthday. To our utter amazement, he turned up himself in the afternoon, having journeyed all the way from Oldham. He said he had got leave from the bank, and as Monday was an holiday, he thought he would give us a little surprise. May the 25th, Sunday. We have not seen Willie since last Christmas, and are pleased to notice what a fine young man he has grown. One would scarcely believe he was Carrie's son. He looks more like a younger brother. I rather disapprove of his wearing a check suit on a Sunday, and I think he ought to have gone to church this morning. But he said he was tired after yesterday's journey. So I refrained from any remark on the subject. He said, "Oh, by the by, did I tell you I've cut my first name William and taken the second name Lupin? In fact, I'm only known at Oldham as Lupin Pooter. If you were to William me there, they wouldn't know what you meant." I said, "My dear Willie, I hope you are happy with your colleagues at the bank." He replied, "Lupin, if you please, and with respect to the bank, there's not a clerk who is a gentleman, and the boss is a cad." I felt so shocked I could say nothing, and my instinct told me there was something wrong. Mustard and cress still not up yet. May the 26th, bank holiday. As there was no sign of Lupin moving at 9 o'clock, I knocked at his door and said we usually breakfasted at 8:30 and asked how long he would be. Carrie came up and asked if he would like some breakfast sent up. He said he could do with a cup of tea and didn't want anything to eat. Lupin not having come down, I went up again at 1:30 and said we dined at 2. He said he would be there. I said, "We have not seen much of you, and you will have to return by the 4:30 train. Therefore, you will have to leave in an hour, unless you go by the midnight mail." He said, "Look here, Governor, it's no good beating about the bush. I've tendered my resignation at the bank." For a moment, I could not speak. When my speech came again, I said, "How dare you, sir? How dare you take such a serious step without consulting me? Don't answer me, sir. You will get up immediately and write a note at my dictation, withdrawing your resignation and amply apologizing for your thoughtlessness." Imagine my dismay when he replied with a loud guffaw, "It's no use. If you want the good old truth, I've got the chuck." May 28th. Simply to please Lupin and make things a little cheerful for him, as he is a little down, Carrie invited Mrs. James to come up from Sutton and spend 2 or 3 days with us. We have not said a word to Lupin, but mean to keep it as a surprise. Fripps, Janus and Co. write to say they are sorry they have no vacancy among their staff of clerks for Lupin. May 29th. Mrs. James of Sutton arrived in the afternoon, bringing with her an enormous bunch of wild flowers. The more I see of Mrs. James, the nicer I think she is, and she is devoted to Carrie. She went into Carrie's room to take off her bonnet and remained there nearly an hour talking about dress. Lupin said he was not a bit surprised at Mrs. James's visit. was surprised at her. Poolers and Smith are sorry they have nothing to offer Lupin. May 30th. Carrie and Mrs. James went off shopping and had not returned when I came back from the office. Judging from the subsequent conversation, I'm afraid Mrs. James is filling Carrie's head with a lot of nonsense about dress. I walked over to Goings and asked him to drop into supper and make things pleasant. Carrie prepared an extemporized supper consisting of the remainder of the joint, a small piece of salmon, which I was to refuse in case there was not enough to go around, and a blancmange. Afterwards, Mrs. James made us play a game of cards called Muggins. To my surprise, and indeed disgust, Lupin got up in the middle and in a most sarcastic tone said, "Pardon me, this sort of thing is too fast for me. I shall go and enjoy a quiet game of marbles in the back garden." June the 1st, Sunday. Nearly late for church, Mrs. James having talked considerably about what to wear all the morning. Lupin does not seem to get on very well with Mrs. James. Pattles and Pattles cannot find a place for Lupin. In the evening, Going came and stayed for supper. Going can be a very nice fellow when he likes, but you never know how long it will last. For instance, during supper, seeing some blancmange on the table, he shouted out, while the servant was in the room, "Hello, the remains of Wednesday." June 2nd. I told Sarah not to bring up the blancmange again for breakfast. It seems to have been placed on our table at every meal since Wednesday. I have of late frequently noticed Carrie rubbing her nails a good deal with an instrument. And on asking her what she was doing, she replied, "Oh, I'm going in for manicuring. It's all the fashion now." I said, "I suppose Mrs. James introduced that into your head." Carrie said, "Yes, but it's all the rage." I said it put me in a rage. She also had on a hat as big as a kitchen coal scuttle and the same shape. June 4th. Mrs. James went home, and both Lupin and I were somewhat pleased. The first time we have agreed on a single subject since his return. In spite of my instructions, that blancmange was brought up again for supper. To make matters worse, there had been an attempt to disguise it by placing it in a dish with jam around it. Carrie asked Lupin if he would have some, and he replied, "No second-hand goods for me, thank you." I told Carrie there and then that if that blancmange were placed on the table again, I would walk out of the house. Merkins and Son write they have no vacancy for Lupin. June the 11th. In consequence of Burwell telling me his wife was working wonders with a new Pinkford's enamel paint, I determined to try it. I bought 2 tins of red on my way home. I hastened through tea, went into the garden and painted some flower pots. I called out Carrie, who said, "You have always got some new-fangled craze." But she was obliged to admit that the flower pots looked remarkably well. Went upstairs into the servants' room and painted her washstand, towel horse and chest of drawers. To my mind, it was an extraordinary improvement, but as an example of the ignorance of the lower classes in the matter of taste, our servant Sarah, on seeing them, evinced no sign of approval, but merely said she thought they looked very well, as they was before. June 12th. Got some more red enamel paint, red to my mind being the best colour, and painted the coal scuttle. I then painted the backs of our Shakespeare, the binding of which had almost worn out. June 13th, painted the bath red and was delighted with the result. Sorry to say Carrie was not, and in fact we had a few words about it. June 14th, went home early and bought some more enamel paint, black this time, and spent the evening touching up the fender, picture frames and an old pair of white boots, making them look as good as new. Also painted Going's walking stick, which he had left behind, and made it look like ebony. June 15th, Sunday. Woke up with a fearful headache and strong symptoms of a cold. Carrie, with a perversity which is just like her, said it was painter's colic, and was the result of my having spent the last few days with my nose over a paint pot. I told her firmly that I knew a great deal better what was the matter with me than she did. I had got a chill and decided to take a bath as hot as I could bear it. Bath ready, could scarcely bear it, it was so hot. I persevered and got in, very hot but very acceptable. I lay still for some time. On moving my hand above the surface of the water, I experienced the greatest fright I ever received in the whole course of my life. For imagine my horror on discovering my hand, as I thought, full of blood. My first thought was that I had ruptured an artery and was bleeding to death, and would be discovered later on looking like a second Marat, as I remembered seeing him in Madame Tussauds. My second thought was to ring the bell, but remembered there was no bell to ring. My third, that it was nothing but the enamel paint which had dissolved with boiling. I determined to tell Farmerson to come on Monday and paint the bath white. June the 21st. I spent the evening quietly with Carrie, of whose company I never tire. We had a most pleasant chat about the letters on Is Marriage a Failure? It has been no failure in our case. In talking over our own happy experiences, we never noticed it was past midnight. We were startled by hearing the door slam violently. Lupin had come in. He made no attempt to turn down the gas in the passage or even look into the room where we were, but went straight up to his room shouting out, "See me dance the polka," or some such nonsense. He then burst into the room and said, "Fill up your glasses, for I have some good and unexpected news for you. I'm engaged to be married." June 22nd, Sunday. From church, Carrie and I met Lupin and his fiancée, Daisy Mutler. My heart quite sank. She is a big young woman, and I should say at least 8 years older than Lupin. I did not even think her good looking. Carrie asked her if she would come in Wednesday week to meet a few friends. She replied that she would only be too pleased. In the evening, Going called. He said, "I hope I'm not troubling you, but I've called for my stick, which I thought you would have sent round. I handed him his stick, which I remember I had painted black with the enamel paint, thinking to improve it. He looked at it for a moment with a dazed expression and said, "Who did this?" I said, "Eh? Did what?" He said, "Did what? Why, destroyed my stick. It belonged to my dear uncle, and I value it more than anything I have in the world. I would like to know who did it." I said, "I'm very sorry. I dare say it will come off. I did it for the best." Goings said, "Then all I can say is it is a confounded liberty. And I would add that you are a bigger fool than you look, only that's absolutely impossible." Cummings dropped in and read a most interesting article on the superiority of the bicycle to the horse. July 4th, a dreadful annoyance. Met Mr. Finsworth, who lives at Watney Lodge, Peckham, and who is a great swell in his way. I ventured to ask him to come home to meet tea and take pot luck. I did not think he would accept such a humble invitation, but he did. We drove home in style in an hansom cab, and I knocked 3 times at the front door without getting an answer. I looked through the letterbox and saw Carrie run upstairs. I told Mr. Finsworth to wait at the door while I went round to the side. There I saw the grocer's boy actually picking the paint off the door, where it had formed into blisters. No time to reprove him, so went round and effected an entrance through the kitchen window. I let in Mr. Finsworth and showed him into the drawing room. I went upstairs to Carrie, who was changing her dress, and told her I persuaded Mr. Finsworth to come home. She replied, "How could you do such a thing? You know it's Sarah's holiday, and there is not a thing in the house," the cold mutton having turned with the hot weather. Eventually, Carrie, like the good creature she is, said she would slip down, wash up the teacups and lay the cloth. I gave Mr. Finsworth our views of Japan to look at, while I ran round to the butcher's to get 3 chops. July 5th. In the evening, to my surprise, a very nice letter came from Mr. Finsworth of Watney Lodge, saying if we, including Carrie, would dine with them tomorrow, Sunday, at 2 o'clock, he would be delighted. Carrie sent Sarah round to the butcher's to countermand the half leg of mutton which we had ordered for tomorrow. July 6th, Sunday. We found Watney Lodge further off than we anticipated, and only arrived as the clock struck 2, both feeling hot and uncomfortable. We were greeted by a large brindle dog, which bounded forward to receive us. He barked loudly. We were shown into the drawing room, which was beautifully decorated. There were a great many watercolours hanging on the walls, mostly different views of India, which were very bright. Mr. Finsworth said they were painted by simps, and added he was no judge of pictures himself, but had been informed on good authority they were worth some hundreds of pounds, although he had only paid a few shillings apiece for them, frames included. There was also a very large picture in a very handsome frame, done in oils. It looked like a religious subject. I was very much struck with the ermine collar. It looked so real. But I unfortunately made the remark that there was something about the expression of the face that was not quite pleasing. The eyes looked glazed. Mr. Finsworth sorrowfully replied, "Yes, the face was done after death. My wife's sister." I felt terribly awkward and bowed apologetically, and in a whisper said I hoped I had not hurt his feelings. We both stood looking at the picture for a few minutes in silence, when Mr. Finsworth took out a handkerchief and said, "She was sitting in our garden last summer," and blew his nose violently. He seemed quite affected, so I turned to look at something else and stood in front of a portrait of a jolly-looking middle-aged gentleman with a red face and top hat. I said to Mr. Finsworth, "Who is this jovial-looking gentleman? Life doesn't seem to trouble him much." Mr. Finsworth said, "No, it doesn't. He is dead too. My brother." One thing that annoyed me at dinner was that the large brindled dog was allowed to remain under the dining room table. It kept growling and licking at my boots every time I moved my feet. I was wearing the old cricket boots I had renovated some time before with the new Pinkford's black enamel paint. I discovered afterwards that the animal had licked off every bit of paint from them. I was positively ashamed of being seen in them. Mrs. Finsworth, who I must say is not much of a Job's comforter, said, "Oh, we are used to Bibbs doing that to our visitors." We stayed till 4, and the walk home was remarkable only for the fact that several fools giggled at the state of my boots. July 7th. Cummings called, hobbling in with a stick, saying he'd been on his back for a week. It appears he was trying to shut his bedroom door, which is situated at the top of the staircase, and in pulling the door hard to give it an extra slam, the handle came off in his hands and he fell backwards downstairs. Cummings said this was the second time that he had been laid up and we had never sent to inquire. I said I knew nothing about it. Cummings said it was mentioned in the Bicycle News. July 10th, the day of Lupin's engagement party. The whole house upset. I had to get dressed at 6:30 as Carrie wanted the room to herself. Mrs. James had come up from Sutton to help Carrie, so I could not help thinking it unreasonable that she should require the entire attention of Sarah the servant as well. And several times I had in my full evening dress to answer the back door. The last time it was the greengrocer's boy, who, not seeing it was me, pushed into my hands 2 cabbages and half a dozen coal blocks. I so far forgot myself as to box the boy's ears. He went away crying and said he should summons me. The first arrival was Going, who with his usual taste greeted me with, "Hello, Pooter. Why, your trousers are too short." I simply said, "Very likely, and you will find my temper short also." He said, "That won't make your trousers longer, Juggins. You should get your missus to put a flounce on them." I wonder I waste my time entering his insulting observations in my diary. We were all rather a jolly party, and Daisy made herself very agreeable, especially in the earlier part of the evening when she sang. Before sitting down to supper, we played a few games, Going, as usual, overstepping the mark. He suggested we should play cutlets, a game we never heard of. He sat on a chair and asked Carrie to sit on his lap, an invitation which dear Carrie rightly refused. So I sat on Goins's knees and Carrie sat on the edge of mine. Daisy sat on the edge of Carrie's lap and Lupin on hers. Then Mrs. James sat on Lupin's knees and finally Cummings sat on Mrs. James. We looked very ridiculous and laughed a good deal. Going then said, "Are you a believer in the Great Mogul?" We had to answer all together, "Yes, oh yes," 3 times. "Yes, oh yes, yes, oh yes, yes, oh yes." "So am I," said Going, and suddenly got up. The result of this stupid joke was that we all fell on the ground and poor Carrie banged her head against the corner of the fender. Mrs. James put some vinegar on it and we all went in to supper. and from the way Going and Cummings ate, you would have thought they had not had a meal for a month. During the meal, Daisy said, "Can you make tea-toad-tums with bread?" and commenced rolling up pieces of bread and twisting them round in her hands. I felt this to be bad manners, but of course said nothing. Presently, Daisy and Lupin, to my disgust, began throwing bread pills at each other. Cummings and Goings, to my astonishment, followed suit. They then commenced throwing hard pieces of crust, one piece catching me on the forehead and making me blink. I said, "Steady, please, steady." Lupin jumped up and said, "Tum-tum," then the band played. I did not know what this meant, but they all roared and continued the bread battle. Going suddenly seized all the parsley off the cold mutton and threw it full in my face. I looked daggers at Going, who replied, "I say, it's no good trying to look indignant with your hair full of parsley." I rose from the table and insisted that a stop should be put to this foolery at once. Lupin shouted, "Time, gentlemen, please, time," and turned out the gas, leaving us in absolute darkness. I was feeling my way about the room when I suddenly received a hard, intentional punch at the back of my head. I said loudly, "Who did that?" There was no answer, so I repeated the question with the same result. I struck a match and lighted the gas. They were all talking and laughing, so I kept my own counsel. When they had gone, I said to Carrie, "The person who sent me that insulting postcard at Christmas was here tonight." July 11th. This morning came a letter from Mr. Perkup, my employer, asking me to take Lupin down to the office with me. I went to Lupin's room, showed him Mr. Perkup's letter, and asked him to get up as quickly as possible. I begged of him not to put on his fast-coloured clothes and ties, but to dress in something black or quiet-looking. Mr. Perkup sent for Lupin, who was with him for nearly an hour. He returned, as I thought, crestfallen in appearance. I said, "Well, Lupin, how about Mr. Perkup?" Lupin commenced to sing. "What's the matter with Perkup? He's all right." I felt instinctively my boy was engaged. In the evening, Carrie sent round for dear old friend Cummings and also to Going. We all sat round the fire and in a bottle of Jackson Frere at 3 and 6 per bottle, which Sarah fetched from the grocer's, drank Lupin's health. I lay awake for hours thinking of the future. My boy in the same office as myself. We can go down together by bus, come home together, and who knows, but before he settles down himself, he may learn to take great interest in our little home. In the summer, he may help us in our little garden with the flowers. and assist us to paint the stands and pots. By the by, I must get in some more enamel paint. He may help me to put a nail in here or a nail in there, or help his dear mother to hang a picture. All this I thought over and over again, and 1,000 happy thoughts besides. I heard the clock strike 4, and soon after fell asleep, only to dream of 3 happy people: Lupin, dear Carrie, and myself.